It seems that, in this day and age, immigrating to another country is not all that uncommon. But with all the well-known causes and issues, it's startling to actually hear them from someone who has experienced the inefficiency of our system. Welcome to the Just Dumb Enough podcast, a show that acknowledges no one is always an expert by dispelling misconceptions with real experts. I'm your host as always, Colton Petrie. My guest today is Irma Goosen. She was born and raised in South Africa, came to the United States, and eventually settled in Canada, but the reasons and timeline of these changes will shock you as much as they did me, which is to say, a fraction of as bad as they were for Irma herself. She also coaches for TEDx and gives speeches on the benefits of legal immigration for both people and companies. And if you live in a privileged country, like I know I do, this interview will definitely leave you feeling grateful for every small and large convenience that we have. Let's see if it's worth moving. Welcome to the show, Irma Goosen.
Hello, Colton, and thank you for having me on your show. I am looking forward to having a fantastic visit with you.
Yes, I am so excited to talk to you. Why don't you introduce yourself a little bit for the audience?
What would you like to know? I can tell you so many things about me, but I'm a twice over legal immigrant. I immigrated from South Africa to the US and then eventually to Canada. So I'm currently in Canada. I am talking on stages about the advantages of the innovative ideas of legal immigrants and how it's advantageous for companies to be able to work with them, because there have been some researchers have been involved with making sure that it's actually something that you can look into and it is something that is beneficial to the bottom line of companies' bank accounts, believe it or not. And then I talk about the importance of having our youth involved as well. I do a lot of work with youth. In fact, I'm busy coaching a teenager who will be speaking on a TEDx stage. I have also spoken on a TEDx stage. I've been coaching for the last 18 months to 2 years for TEDx that people can get on the stage. So I'm doing that as well. And then the other thing I do talk about is the fact that there's a digital divide, and it's specifically to my niche that I talk about. But in general, it is leaving millions of people behind because of the way the chatbots are set up. They are not set up for people with acquired disabilities or someone with speech impediments or someone who's older or someone whose language, the first language isn't English. And that's more or less in a nutshell what I do.
I mean, a lot of impressive things, especially, congratulations having a child that is about to walk onto a TEDx stage. I'm sure that's probably both nerve-wracking and very uplifting for you.
Oh, absolutely. I spoke to the TEDx organizer. It must have been months. And I've known this girl for a few years and I've seen her grow. And her parents are also immigrants. And I was very, very happy when the TEDx organizer contacted me and said, yes, she will accept her on her stage. So she will be speaking in April 2025. She will be on the stage. I'm
very
excited.
cool.
And it will be in San Diego. So I will be going to San Diego to support her when she speaks.
So obviously, like a lot of this centers around, immigration and the access in different countries. Did you grow up in South Africa?
I did. I grew up in South Africa. I went to school there. I worked there. And then, of course, there are so many misgivings about what really has been happening in South Africa and a lot of misinformation as well. But the short and ugly of it was that my daughter at the time, she was about 2 years old, and she was attacked. Her daycare was attacked in broad daylight. It was very traumatic. I was at work. I have an engineering background, and I got the phone call that her daycare has been attacked. And whatever I hear on the radio, that she was okay. Of course, when I got there, it was absolute chaos. And that was the final straw, because so many things have happened. I've been witness to people being hijacked and killed and pulled out of their vehicles, of violent natures, of people jumping on my vehicle, trying to stop me from moving. And we tend to see one side of the story, and people don't see the other side of the minority that lived in South Africa at the time. So, and that was a big reason I left. It was a personal reason, but I wanted to. I wasn't safe. I didn't feel safe. My daughter wasn't safe. And that then took me to another adventure. I have never in my life been on a plane before. And we left South Africa on my first plane ride. It was terrifying, absolutely terrifying. It was the middle of December, and there was a tropical storm, thunder and lightning, and all these gushes of water coming down. And I'm here in the airport, not knowing if my plane was going to be canceled or not. So what the authorities did, the airport authorities did, they chartered one of the largest Boeings for all of us who had to fly from Durban in KwaZulu-Natal to the Johannesburg airport, the international airport. So they chartered a plane for all of us, and we managed to get on the plane. And of course, when we got there, we had to run. I have never been to an airport before. I was an adult, and I had to find customs. I had to clear customs. I had to find the correct gate. I had to, this toddler dragging her with me and trying to carry her. But then your luggage that you take on the plane, it was absolute chaos. And then I flew with Alitalia, and it was one of the worst winter storms in history. So when we got to the airport in Italy, I didn't realize. All these, the turbulence and the fluctuations, and we all belted in, and the pilots stopped the plane very, very far away from the terminals. And I didn't know there's ice. They could slide into the buildings. So I'm sitting there, and what's happening? There was a lady next to us. What's happening? What's going on? And she said, oh, they're just taking their time. It's been a very bad ice storm. And we got to the front, and there were people stopping them and putting blocks on the wheels and chocks and whatever the heck they did. And everyone cheered. My first flight ever. And we flew into an ice storm. That's how it started.
Yeah. Talk about a rough start. I mean, and I can't imagine anyone would ever fault you for leaving, because that's like a parent's worst fear, right? Is their child being in danger. And there's been a lot of things over the last couple of years where they say, like, oh, there was an attack at a school, and every parent that's not involved goes, what if it was my kid? What if my kid was there? And you're like, no, my kid was in that situation. Like, that's why I left. That's why I had to get out of here.
Yeah, the situation was so bad when the daycare was attacked. The attackers walked into the area where the babies were. She was with the toddlers, so she was kind of up a terrace in a different building, and that is what saved her, because the babies, they were traumatized. They were harmed. The caregivers were tied up. And we were oblivious. I'm at work. You think your child is safe. And the what ifs And I see it today everywhere. And when you listen to the news, the what ifs. What if it was your child? What if your child got harmed? Yes, it is terrifying. And that's the reason we left, because it wasn't just that, though, Colton. It was also the fact that we weren't safe in our own homes. We weren't safe. We couldn't walk on the streets. When I got to Houston, the first thing I noticed was that, first of all the Christmas decorations, because we got there around Christmas time, just after Christmas, and all the Christmas decorations that were left outside, and it was okay. It wasn't taken, It was. And then the other thing I noticed, which was a big, big eye opener for me, was the freedom to be able to walk your family and to be okay. Because I grew up where we had curfews, and then as an adult, I had to fend for myself, right? I'm out of the house now, and then of course, with my family. And it was quite a culture shock to get to Houston, Texas. First of all, the accents, because there is a definite accent. And then English is it was my second language. It's probably now the only language I speak, not my mother tongue so much anymore. But it was a different English. It was a different language. I had no idea what it meant to fixing to go shopping, y'all. It's like, what are you saying? You're fixing. What is broken, y'all? What is y'all? Things like that. And the same when I came to Canada, of course, different. Oh, my word. So we got here middle of summertime and started working. It became fall and it started getting cold. And we had a babysitter, a Canadian babysitter. Her kids were all grown. So she would come in the mornings very early and take care of the kids, because we had to leave so early, like 5:30 in the morning, we had to leave. And then one morning she walked in and I told my kids, and we all shivering, it's now towards December and it's so cold, so cold. And she walked in and she looked around. She said, why is it so cold? I said, I don't know. I don't know how you Canadians make these cold winters. I don't know if I can stay here. It's too cold. She introduced me to the miraculous little button and the little machine on the wall that's for central heating. You slide it over. You turn it on, actually. It should be turned on. It was never turned on. Didn't know about it. I didn't know there's such a thing as central heating. What? Are you kidding me? I grew up in a country where the houses were built out of brick, so it would maintain the cool or the heat. And we had space heaters. We had, electrical heaters. Yeah, I discovered that there is such a thing. And now I am extremely grateful that we have that here in the houses. And I applaud the pioneers who went before us, who didn't have this. And I'm very grateful I'm not one of those pioneers. I'm glad I'm one of the ones that came after.
So, and that's just one of those differences where you're in Texas, you're like, I need to cool down because this place is 110 degrees in the summer and I see the sidewalk melting outside. Then you get to Canada and you're like, everything's frozen and I think I'm going to freeze along with it.
It's quite the experience. And then the other thing, of course, is driving. In South Africa, you drive on the left side of the road. So the steering is on the opposite side of the vehicles. And I had to redo my driver's license in Houston. And everything was different. You think different because you're so used to, your body is so used to turn a certain way. And so I had to learn that, first of all. And then coming to Canada to drive in winter, it became such a fear when I had to get behind the steering wheel, I was like, oh, I don't want to slide. I don't want to slide because I heard of black ice. I didn't know what black ice was. Someone told me, be careful of black ice. So what do I know? So we have lots of interesting experience.
Yeah, I know. Where I live, we have about 6 total days of snow, maybe in any given year. And I look outside and I go, yeah, I'm not driving. That's it.
Everything comes to a standstill.
No, that's it. I'm all done. Sorry.
Oh my goodness, yes.
So, how old were you when you made that move from South Africa to the US? Like, what age
I'm
group?
not telling you that. I was in my 20s.
Okay. I mean,
So
it's fairly young. You didn't do it like in your 40s. You weren't like a well-established adult. You're like, I'm barely an adult. Like, I'm trying to figure this out.
yeah, it's scary. It's scary to make a decision like that because when you decide to leave your country and to find a place where your children can thrive, where you can thrive, it's a knee-jerk decision. You have to make that decision and stick with it. Now, I have 2 daughters, and the one was born in South Africa. The other one was born in Houston. So she's a full-fledged US citizen. And I see the difference in the 2 girls because the one born in South Africa, she had a little bit of that culture already that she experienced. And then the other one, she's straight into the North American way of doing things, right? So it's very interesting how the 2 girls, how well they get along, but also how the older one can reminisce about what she remembers a little bit, especially when we moved to Houston, because her sister was too young. I mean, baby in Houston, right? But so it's a very interesting scenario to have the 2 girls basically born in 2 different cultures. But here in Canada, because Canada is a multicultural nation, and so it was easier for them, it was easy for them to adapt. And I think it was easier for the younger one to adapt because she was young when we moved here. And it was as easy for the older one to adapt when we moved to Houston because she was not even 3 when she and I got to Houston.
Yeah.
On our plane ride.
Yeah, you're like, is every plane ride like this? And they're like, no, that was a bad one. And you're like, oh, good, because that was awful. So we hear a lot, right? Like, as somebody who was born in the US and only knows what I hear on the news about it, I always hear that immigrating to the US is like quite a long process. They say, like there's all these forms and, you have to get a lawyer and there's, tests for citizenship and all these things. Did you have to go through all of that?
Yes. When you immigrate to another country, the only way you usually will get accepted, and you want to do it legally, you need to be educated. You need to be prepared to work. Work experience is very important. And then they want to know your history back to when you were just a little embryo in your mother's womb. They want to know everything. Where did you live? Why did you move? What is the reason you moved to this area? Where did you go from there? And it was the same in the US and Canada. It was both times very laborious. What happened in the US, even though my daughter is a US citizen, we had to leave after about 4 years because the system was so slow to process our application at the time and the type of visas we were on. So while we were here in Canada, we got a note from the immigration lawyer that our files got closed because during that time, a lot of green cards have been given to illegal immigrants who have been working full-time in the US. So what happened was so they could at least be legal, that they could be getting all the benefits. And that caused us then, of course, to kind of lose our application, and we would have had to start all over again. So at that time, because we were in Canada, we decided we will stay and then but I do speak in the US. I travel to the US quite often, which makes it, because we're neighbors, it makes it a little bit easy for us. And my daughter as well, because she's a born citizen. So, and she lived there for a few years. So at least she can go back if she wanted to go back, right?
Well,
And
and
she
that,
can sponsor me.
hey, there you go. That's kind of what made me wonder about it. Is I was like, oh, you moved to the US and then to Canada. I was like, oh, is there a reason? As I'm just looking at it on
Mm,
paper, I'm like, oh, from the US to Canada. Oh,
mhm.
strange. Like I've never thought about moving to Canada from the US, but it sounds like that decision was kind of made for you, where like
Yes,
the legal
yes.
challenges was just like, you know what, you'd be better off starting over where you're at.
We could choose because many South Africans went to Australia, New Zealand, England, and we could go to any of those countries. But we thought, Canada is just on the other side of the border, and it should be easy to then go back there, which it didn't play out the way we wanted to, but we are happy here in Canada. And it's not as if you're tied to just one country. I mean, we can go anywhere in the world. And with Zoom, you and I are currently in two different countries and we're speaking to each other. So that makes it very easy.
Yeah, the technology is certainly a help. And it is one of those that like no move is ever permanent, right? Like,
No,
your
no.
daughter's a US citizen. She could come back whenever she wanted to, and she could just move
Mm-hmm.
here. And that's technically her changing from like living in Canada to the US. And it seems like this
Absolutely.
huge ordeal, but really, like for her, that's a relatively easy move. Like
Oh,
she
yeah.
just changes her address on a form and she's good.
Yes, yes. She just gets that and shows her birth certificate and reapplies for a passport. And that's what the lawyers told us. It's basically it. And then we could apply for a green card if we so wanted to do that. So, she's young, so she can decide what she wants to do.
I mean, and hearing this story to like, you start all the paperwork, you fill out all these really arduous things that
Oh,
you're just like, every single bit of information I have to give them, only to
mm.
get bumped off the list later. Like, how much money went into, paying a lawyer and doing all this paperwork for it to just like disappear?
Yeah, a lot.
A lot. Yeah.
A lot of money. And that's the thing that people don't understand. When you want to go to another country, you need to be prepared to pay for everything. Someone isn't going to do that for you. That's, first of all, the most important one. The next one is when you go to another country, you cannot force your beliefs onto that country. You are a visitor in that country. You are the newbie. You need to adjust to the rules, regulations, cultures of that country. Now, there are ways you can adjust, and that is the reason why I had created a program that I work with, and it helps people with soft skills. It's the Connect framework. And really, it's how do you fit in to a new community? So not only does it work for legal immigrants, it works for anyone moving to a new community. Think about it, Colton. If you had to move to another state, it would feel like another country, even though you wouldn't have the procedures of paperwork and whatnot, maybe to change your driver's license, right? But it would be completely different. There would be different accents, different rules. The counties and the towns would act different. They would do things different. And that is similar to when you're a new immigrant. You are in a country which is completely different. And I do not agree with anyone who is new into a country to want to expect the country to change their ways to suit the newcomer. I am not for it. I do not agree with it. I don't think that's the way you are welcome. Then you should go back to where you came from. And I know it sounds harsh, but there are so many radicals all across the world at the moment. So we need to choose what we want to do. We need to decide how we want to act. And going to another country, even for a visit, you need to be able to respect that country's norms, the people, the language, the customs. I spoke at Oxford University in England a couple of years ago, and it was a smorgasbord of people across the world who went to the university. And the customs there are so deep into history and into, what was done hundreds of years ago. And people adhere to that. So why, when we go to another country, why can we not do the same thing? And show the respect, show the gratefulness that that country thought us good enough to be allowed to work there, to live there, to play there, kids to go to school there, to study there. And to me, that is the most important thing of being a legal immigrant.
Well, and you're right. I mean, especially like, again, I know the US just because I've always been here, but like our states are so large that realistically moving from one to the other would be like living in Europe and going from one country to the next. So, it is this huge difference in the way we do things, but it also is one of those that we speak to in the US. And I've heard people say it really well, where they're like, if you don't believe in the values of the place you're living, like you can feel free to pick any of the other 49 states that might align with your values better. And then you can move to that place because that's how we're meant to be. You're not supposed to like, move to a new place and hate everything about it.
No. And that's just it. Year of people moving to another place and they hate it. But the world is our oyster. You can always move again. It's money. I get that. It costs money to move. But at the end of the day, we have to live where we will be happy, where we can feel as if we've come home. And I felt that way in Houston, and I felt that way here in Canada. But it's a mindset. It's like a switch. It's you make the choice. I'm going to adapt. You make that decision, and it feels almost as if it's a physical reaction in your body, because you cannot go into a country and want to be accepted for who you are when you have malicious intent. You cannot do that. That is not how the world works. And that is why I talk about this, because the more people realize the importance of accepting everyone for our differences, but also when you move to a new country, new province, new state, wherever you go, respect what you find and treat people with kindness. To me, that's what makes the world go round.
Well, and it's one of those that, like, if you're going to be a malicious person, like, you'll find that no matter where you go, no one likes you because, like, that's not a valued thing. Like, there's no country that's like, oh, yeah, come here. We're all very malicious towards each other. You're like, no, that's not sustainable. No one survives in that kind of an environment.
No, and this is something that we need to understand, even though there are ways that you can adapt to a new area, county, country, wherever you go. It is difficult. I mean, it's really, really not moonshine and roses when you start over. I left South Africa. When I went onto that plane, I had two suitcases, and my daughter had two suitcases, which had her teddies and I mean, she was little, so clothes and the rest of the stuff was what I could take with. I started over with that. I didn't hold it against anyone. I didn't demand to be treated different. I was prepared to put in the work. I was prepared to give my all. And the more people realize that you cannot demand, you need to give, the better this world will be wherever we go.
Certainly. And you had written a guide, what I would call a guide, called
Yeah.
Surviving Culture Shock, right?
I have, yes. And it's some of my experiences that's in this guide. It's also what newcomers can do. It's just a little pocketbook, but it helps you integrate better into the new society and community because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. If you choose not to integrate, if you choose to keep yourself separate, you're never going to feel like someone who belongs. You are going to feel like an outsider and a newcomer for the rest of your life. And and I talked about it in my TEDx talk as well, is there are so many immigrants who have done magnificent deeds. I mean, I'm not sure if you're aware, but there are companies that have been supported by venture capital investors, and they were done by immigrants. You know, it's Google was started initially people who came from another country, the people, the same with Yahoo and with eBay, with Intel. There are so many companies that people don't realize. It doesn't matter where you come from. It's, are you going to give your all?
Well, and it's one of those, it's like you're not saying you can't miss certain aspects of where you came from. Like you're always allowed to be a little homesick, but the hope is that
Yeah.
the place you've showed up to, you want to make it your new home, somewhere that feels good. Like when you come home at night, you're like, yeah, this is the place I belong now.
Mm-hmm. You know, one of the things I mentioned in the pocketbook as well is when you are new, and it's we, the citizens, the people who are already here, we also have a responsibility. When we see a newcomer, just say hello. Can we help you? Would you like to go for coffee? Do you know where the library is? Do you need a school for your kids? Do you know where to go? Kindness costs nothing, absolutely nothing. And I see that with the kids I work with. And there's this group we are involved with. It's a few of us, myself and my friends, and we work with large groups and we help them with youth leadership programs. One of the groups that we're currently working with is a Rotary outbound group. So what it means, it's basically exchange students. And they are going to go to other countries from Canada. And then, of course, students from other countries come into Canada. And it's across in the US, it's every country that is involved with the Rotary, they've got this exchange student program. And one of the things these students are made aware of is the fact that when you go and live with a host family, you have to respect their traditions. You cannot want to change their way of life. You can share what your life is like. You can share your customs, what you do with your parents, what do you do over the holidays, but you cannot go there and be rude or disrespectful. Now we teach that to young people, to youth. Why is it so difficult to teach that to adults? You tell me that, Colton, because I still cannot figure that out.
And, as long as I've been, in school, as long as I was in school, we always had the exchange programs, right? Where it's like, oh, yeah, we, shipped a couple of kids over to Japan because we had a partnership with one of their schools, and a couple of Japanese students came over and they stayed with us. And it's like, that's just the trial sized version of immigrating, really. Because you're like, yeah, you just showed up in a new place and you got to figure everything out. Like, you're going to
Yeah,
go
it's
home at the end of this, but like, for all intents and purposes, you are immigrating right now.
well, exactly for a whole year. And at the end of that year, they need to do a presentation in the language of the country they're in. So if they are in Japan, they have to give it in Japanese or in Italian or Spanish, which is fantastic because think about what these kids come back with to their different countries once they've been on that exchange program, right? Last year, we worked with a group and she was Japanese and she's never been on a bicycle before because the Japanese, they in the cities, it's busy. And then she learned how to ride a bike and she told us she's going home and she's getting bicycles for her family and they will be riding in the park from then on. So that was something very cute to
Yeah.
hear.
Well, and it's one of those that, like, if you're the family, that has an exchange student as well, there is like a whole different perception that is open to you. We had a couple of students in my friends' households that were from China, and they, like, the first night I was over there, they just like laid outside. And it's Oregon, like, we're a cold state, and so they're just like laying outside and they're staring up at the sky, and we're like, what are you doing? Like, you're gonna freeze out here. Like, I know it's fall-ish, but it's still Oregon and it's cold. And they said, well, where we grow up, I assume they're from, one of the major cities. They just said you can't see the stars. Like, there's so much light from the city that stars don't exist. They're a thing we see in movies.
Oh my
But they're
goodness.
like, here, like, this is a very rural place and the only lights are from houses next to you. So anywhere you are, you can just look up and see stars. And I
Oh,
had never thought about the possibility of being unable to see the stars.
mm, my daughter, a few months ago, it was cold, it was probably fall, and we were told there will be the Northern Lights would be able, they would be able to see it. So they drove probably about half an hour and they took the most beautiful pictures. And I remember when we came to Canada and we were in this town, and it's very much oil and gas town. And my daughter was sick. So it was the middle of the night and I was sitting at her bed and I looked out the window and the sky was moving. It felt as if it was pulsating. And I thought, am I going to die? No one ever told me about Northern Lights. The colors, the absolute magnificence of such a beautiful spectacle. It, it stayed with me. It's still with me because that was an experience that not many people get to have. I was just grateful, but the sky was doing this, it was moving. It's the weirdest sensation.
Yeah, and you're like, that's all culture shock too. You're like, this is something that you're like, oh, like, your body is literally frozen as you're like, oh, this is it. This is the end. But you're like, it's not a
Yeah.
bad thing. It's just so different from anything that that, like, it's incomprehensible.
Oh, yes. And so the very first, I didn't grow up with Halloween. In South Africa, we didn't have Halloween at the time. So when we were in Houston, imagine the shock to see people showing up at an engineering company and they are dressed as anything. And it's a serious business. Some of them went to the dentist for special teeth, special caps to put. I just, my mouth hung open. That was really interesting.
Yeah, that is definitely probably a weird one, I guess, that we do a lot in the US.
It's fun. I know many people say it's not a good tradition, but to me, it's fun. It's a time to dress up and just be silly, and just have a blast.
Well, and it's one of those that I think really changes depending on who you are, where you are in your life. Like as a kid, I loved Halloween because candy, right? Like you get candy and that's
Well, pillowcase is full of candy,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So I'm like, this is the greatest holiday ever. Then I got older, I became a paramedic. I hated Halloween because I'm like, I
Yes.
can't tell who's actually injured. I can't tell who's got a real weapon. Like this is a living nightmare for me. And now, like being out of that field, I love Halloween because I love seeing creativity in kids. Where I'm like,
Yes.
if you show up to my house and you've got a genuinely creative outfit, I'm going to unload all the candy I have on you.
Yes. And unfortunately, you are correct. I feel sorry and I have a lot of empathy with the emergency workers because during that time, kids are all yelling, screaming, and you're not sure, are they injured? Are they not? Are they? Are they okay? And patrolling the streets and making sure they all safe. Just, it's a huge job if you think about it, right?
Well, and it's one of those like every country has probably some version of that that scares their emergency workers where they're like, oh no, it's, paint the town red day. And you're like, how much of this is blood? Well, probably none of it, but
Yeah, that
you
I
aren't sure.
remember that in South Africa because I grew up with rugby and cricket and sunshine and barbecues outside all the time. I mean, winter is very short. It's about 6 weeks max, and it's not that cold. But that is when it goes crazy with the rugby games and the huge stadiums. And of course, now South Africa is also very much involved with soccer. So that as well. And I find I don't like going to these big, big, big gatherings because there are so many weird people. So I need to tell you this. We went to a concert here in Canada, very prim and proper, never done drugs before. I'm not a drinker. Sitting in the concert hall. I will not mention the artist's name, but I'm smelling. Why does it look so cloudy? I guess we were very happy when we walked out of there. Let me put it in that way. I've never. And my friends, I said, is this what I think it is? And you look around you and people are sneaky with it, right? And they go, yep. Mm-hmm. Don't worry. Be happy.
Yeah, that happened at a concert I was recently at. There was some guy like, I mean, it was standing room only, but there was some guy a little further up in the crowd than me, and he was smoking so much that the security guy comes over and he goes, "Look, it's a concert. I don't care that you do it. You're not supposed to do it here. I don't care that you do, but you look like a chimney. So could you like breathe down instead of up?" And I thought, like, this is the craziest thing I've heard recently. It's just like, hey, I know
Oh,
I'm a security guard and this isn't allowed, but just try and change how you're smoking.
oh my goodness. Yeah, I think we're in a different world. Things are changing so fast. And at the end of the day, it's up to us to not only educate people, but it's up to us to be the change we want to see in people. And I believe that. I believe that I have to be the example. I have to tell people and explain to them and educate them what is possible, what you can do, but also what you shouldn't do. And that is the reason I talk about immigration, because it's a hot topic. I know that. I know it's a very sensitive topic at the moment, but it's important that we understand we need immigrants. We need them to be legal. We need them to want to be here and not to get a free handout. And we need them because fewer babies are being born worldwide than an aging population that's moving out of the job market and the job force, who's taking with them all those skills. And that is why it is very important for us to be aware of that.
Certainly. And I know there's, a lot of countries that are being very proactive about the way they do some of these things. Like, I want to say it's Germany, and I could be wrong. People will correct me after the show, but I think it's Germany that has like work permits where they're like, look, even if you're not from Germany, you're allowed to come work in Germany. You just have you drive up to the border, you show your permit, you go to work. They're like, you fall under all the same protections that a German citizen does, as well as a couple of others for being like, thank you for being here laws, you know?
Mm.
And
Well,
it's strange the way that we've chosen to kind of manage it, whether it's like an all or nothing sort of situation. I see a lot of places that are like hard limits, absolutely no immigration, and other places that are like absolutely no limits, any immigration. And I'm like, I feel like there's a happy medium in here.
when you look at innovation, think about it. It's technology, it's engineering, right? And as well as education. So you have those that you need to talk about. You have those that you want to expand. You want to be able to grow within those fields. Health and sciences, it's a field that you can grow into. And there are so many innovations happening on a daily basis. It's important for us to understand that where I came from, I dealt with different industries than when I went to Houston and when I came to Canada. It's a different way of performing in engineering. It's a different way of looking at industries. So you would look very different, for example, the way you deal with petrochemical refineries versus oil and gas versus liquefied natural gas, for example, or, the health sciences. We need to bring these new ideas to the forefront that we can make the earth a little bit safer, protect the earth a little bit more, because we've just been gouging and digging, but also understanding that what you think is a great innovation is perhaps not so great because of the detrimental effect it has on the environment. And that is when you have to go back to the drawing board and you need to start over and think of something else that you can start with. And that is what we need to be open to. People, we're weird creatures. It's when you need to change the way you think, the way you've been acting, the way you look at something, people, they kick back. They don't want to do that. They don't want to say, no, I cannot do this. Why do you want me to change? But we need to be open. We need to be open to this. Think about it. Just computers. It started with this big room full, it was a huge room to be able to have a computer at work. And now we're carrying it in our phones. So that is innovation. That is progress. We just need to be open to it, but also open to shelving an idea if it's not the right one.
Well, and that seems to be the human way of living, right? Is we find something that kind of works, maybe isn't very efficient, it's very short-term thinking, and then we just, run it like it's a marathon until there's a sudden catastrophe, and then we're like, oops, time to fix it. And you're like, the time to fix it was before it was a catastrophe. Like when we
Yes.
had lots of ability.
And then we just want to put a band-aid on it because you don't know how to change it. You don't want to change it, or it's too far in to change. And I think we just need to be open to learn and explore everywhere we go. You get people who are over 100 years old, Colton, and they are so smart, so bright, and just that so interested in people, to be inquisitive and to want to find out what makes things work and why people act the way they act. We can learn from them, from the wise ones. But we can also learn from kids. And sometimes they say the darnest things, and you think, why should I do that? Why should I do what this kid told me to do? But then you think about it. They do have something there. They do have a great idea that could save me time, make things easier. We just have to stop being so stubborn.
Well, and we see the same thing. Like a lot of companies have, the last one I worked for instance, had what they call an opportunity for improvement. And anyone can submit one no matter how long you've been working there. And the idea was if you're very experienced, you might like realize how to do something better before the upper management levels. And the brand new people that come in might see the thing everyone has overlooked because it's just gone on for so long that they ignore it now. And they're like, you could fix that. And, oftentimes you're like, oh, the new guy's right. And so that's the same thing here. Like we've been doing things in, the US, in Canada for so long that they just seem commonplace. And if you had that fresh idea, that fresh mind to say, like, hey, we could change this really easily. Like, oh, good thing we brought you in, huh?
And people don't like it. People don't like change. But we can adapt. It's just that mindset. I'm open to suggestions. I'm open to new ideas. I'm open to whatever the case might be. My kids think I'm crazy, but I love AI. I love the fact that it allows us to explore areas we wouldn't always have been able to explore. Not just that, it can enhance what you do, which to me is what AI is all about. It is there to enhance our lives, to make sure that we can get the correct information. Of course, some AIs are not programmed like that, but we need to be selective. And we should always understand AI is a tool. And that is why when I mentioned, when we just started chatting, when you have a chatbot, for example, and the chatbot has to screen the person calling in to make an appointment to see a doctor. And that chatbot is not set up to communicate with someone with a stutter who has spacing between their words, or someone who has an accent, or someone who's stressed out and they mumbling their words or they falling over their words. If those chatbots have not been taught to recognize that, then we are currently leaving millions behind. And it's especially a generation that's not really been around the technology as much. And I think it's the same if you apply for a new job. You're new in a country, you're allowed to work, you have a work permit maybe, you have your permanent residency, your green card, and you want to apply. So you go online. I mean, you're going to do it. And then you submit your resume. The chatbot, the AI, doesn't like the format because it's not the format they've been trained on. So even you might be overqualified for the position, you get declined because of your resume not. So I think we have a lot of work to be done with that and to be able to make sure that people are included. And that is something we can do when you make an appointment, you hear there's something going on here, you can contact the company and say, please talk to the chatbot or talk to the chatbot. Please program it in such a way or teach it to get used to different accents. And it's really the same we do when we're legal immigrant in a new country. We get used to the different accents, the different ways of talking and thinking. And that's what makes us all feel inclusive.
Well, and with you working in this space, I wanted to ask this. AI seems like it's getting so much better, so much faster than,
Yes.
a lot of things. And I guess that's the point of it, right? Is that like one improves the next, improves the next. How long before we see some of those issues start to fall off? Obviously it takes an amount of effort of us saying like, hey, your program is missing this accent. Like it can't understand it. You got to work on it. We need those inputs. But how long before we realistically start seeing those things just drop off and AI becomes, a part of every screening process?
It's already happening almost everywhere you go. You even get the robots coming to take your order and replacing people. So I think it will be a while, and it's up to us to be able to do that. Yeah, I think with AI, to get back to that question, the more people can talk to the companies using those chatbots, the easier and sooner changes could happen. But we need to do it. We need to want to get involved. We need to want to tell people, get involved. Don't just sit in your corner. Don't just say, it doesn't affect me. I don't have those issues with the chatbots or the AIs. I don't know what the problem is, because there are so many people who do struggle. If there's someone with a traumatic brain injury and they struggle formulating their words, we need to be understanding, and we need to teach the AI formats and the chatbots. We need to teach them that, because think about it. Now, I like Chatty. You know who Chatty is? Chat GPT. My best buddy. Is the best one. Anyway, and I asked these questions. I actually asked these questions. What do we do? How can we go about it? What happens when we do that? And the answers will surprise you. And that's exactly some of the things is you need to talk. Humans need to talk to humans, programming these AI programs and tell them there's something missing. If we don't do that, if we don't let them know, they cannot change what they don't know needs to be changed, right?
Right. Well, this has been fantastic. I mean, extremely insightful, and I've appreciated all your time. I want to make sure people know how to find your stuff if they're looking for more from you.
Well, I am on LinkedIn. So irmagoosen.com is my website. And LinkedIn, I'm Irma Goosen. They can find me there and they can contact me, message. I don't use Facebook as much anymore. I do like LinkedIn. I feel as a business community, that is the program that suits me the best.
Very good. Well, I will put links to that in the show notes. Can we also buy your book online if we're looking to, get the
Absolutely.
survival guide here?
Yes, it's a little survival guide. Yes, definitely. You can buy that little pocketbook. I have written quite a few books, but I am proud of that pocketbook because that was a personal experience that I could share and help others so that they don't struggle. They might still struggle. Let me put it this way, that they can have some guidance while they're struggling. getting to fit into the new community.
Very fair. Well, I'll put links to that as well in the show notes. Irma, thank you so much for being here. I've appreciated your time immensely.
Oh, Colton, thanks for having me. I enjoyed our coffee break and I love the show title. It is absolutely ingenious, and thank you for having me.
So what would you have to see or experience to make you want to leave your country? Be sure to let me know. I really want to hear, how grounded they are in their own country and what would make them move. In other news, March is pretty much over, and the rankings have evened out a little. Number 1, England of the United Kingdom. Number 2, Hong Kong, who dropped a spot after I asked why I was popular. I guess I'm not supposed to ask that. It shows that I was never very popular to ask that, right? Number 3, the United States, with California, Illinois, and Washington now at the top. Number 4, Australia, with Victoria now leading Queensland and Western Australia. And number 5, Canada, with Ontario still keeping them just above Israel. That's it for this week. Have a great week, a great weekend, and I'll see you all back here next week for another new episode. Until that next episode, pretty pleased with all those things that help the show grow, like rating, reviewing, liking, and subscribing. You can also reach out to dumbenoughpodcast@gmail.com or on any of the social medias if you want to reach me personally. But most importantly, stay dumb.